So welcome everybody. And Jackie, is that you on the phone?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
Okay,
is.
thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I have a slight cold, so if I cough and sneeze and do weird stuff, I apologize. And I've already warned Carolyn that she may have to take over if I get into a coughing fit, but hopefully that will not happen this evening. So, let's see. So the meeting was called to order, and Carolyn, if you'd like to just briefly cover our Zoom etiquette and guidelines, I would appreciate it.
Sure, thanks, Kathy, and welcome everybody. We would like to just remind everybody, if you'd like to participate in the discussion this evening, there is the raise hand function that is part of one of the lovely features that Zoom has. You can also raise your hand and try to wave to get our attention as well if you have a question or if you would like to get into the queue. We'll do our best to monitor and diligently monitor that. And also the expectation is that we are going to have a discourse full of robust respect, and we would kindly like everybody to please follow the instructions of the chair of the meeting, who is acting President Kathy Gleason. And if there are any issues that arise, we kindly ask that you take them offline with us. And also, yeah, we are going to reserve the right to mute anybody if the situation warrants it. So we'd like to have a great meeting here that has lots of flow, because we have a lot on the agenda that we'd like to get through this evening, and with any luck, hopefully end before 9 o'clock. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Carolyn. So again, welcome everybody. And our next item would be to approve the agenda. It was sent out with a meeting notice earlier today, so I hope everybody's had a chance to review it. And it's very executive board report heavy, but we'll try and get through those items as quickly as we can. So is there any amendments to, well, first, could I have a motion to move the agenda, approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Could I have a second?
Second.
Susanna, I'll second.
Okay. Dan, was that you seconding, or
Yeah.
I'll just go ahead and I'll go ahead and go with that. Husband Dan also has a cold, and so his voice is a little bit different this evening. Okay, is there any objection to approval of our agenda?
Kathy, I had one quick addition,
Yes.
and that is I'm going to add a couple different things under the land use report that aren't listed. I don't think it needs an amendment, but I just wanted to make people aware of that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And I actually have one additional item under executive board report that is not listed. JJ Brooks called me this afternoon. We had a talk, so I'll give you an update on our discussion about that. So anybody else have any additions or want to comment on things? If not, if I don't hear any objection, I'm going to go ahead and have that approved with no objection. Thank you. Okay. All right. So I know that there was maybe an effort to maybe get somebody to try and write up our February 2nd minutes, but in the end, I didn't see anybody that was able to do that. The good news is we are recording all of our meetings, and they are posted on YouTube. And so if anybody has specific questions about what may have taken place at any given meeting, they can always go back and look those up and listen to those. But certainly without without a secretary, and that job just doesn't get taken care of at times, but we're going to continue to work on that. As far as announcements, I have one, and really there would be a lot of them, but I think this is a really, really important one. And that is that Sunday, March 5th is the deadline to register to vote for the April 4th municipal mail-in ballot elections. So if you're an unregistered voter, which I kind of doubt if anybody involved in community council stuff is, but if you know of anybody that's not registered to vote yet, please encourage them to do so. And you can go on the municipal website or call the Alaska Division of Elections at 907-522-8683. So pretty important deadline coming up on Sunday. Does anybody else have any announcements they would like to share? Hearing none, let's go ahead and move on with, let's see, it looks like we have our fire station representative that has joined us. So we got a request for a brief discussion with regard to fire safety tips. So let's move on to Fire Station 5. So welcome and thank you for joining us. Let's see.
Kathy,
Yes. Tom?
this is Jonathan.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
I did have a question for Fire Station 5.
Okay, well, hang on one second, because I want to do a little presentation.
Okay.
So Tom, are you with us for Fire Station 5?
We are. How are you guys?
Okay, thank you. Welcome. You have the
Yeah,
floor.
thanks for having us. How are you guys tonight?
Good. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so my name's Jacob. I'm a firefighter here. Senior Captain Upchurch is behind me. Yeah, we just want to talk about a few different things that are coming up with the fire department. March is spring forward with daylight savings times. That's a great time for us to check your smoke detectors, make sure those are operational, CO detectors, and change the batteries and all of those in the house. Couple other things that are coming up with AFD. We have 2 bonds on the ballot. One's for capital improvements. I'm trying to replace a couple of fire engines that are getting pretty high in miles and kind of coming to the end of their usable life. So that's one of those. And we also have a couple facility improvements that we're trying to get passed, kind of help fix some older buildings that we have within the fire department. One other thing that or a couple other things that we got going on. We have one fire academy that's going on right now. There's 22 candidates going through it as we speak. They'll be finished the end of this month and hopefully be operational come April 1st. Anchorage Fire Department also just updated or started a thing called Pulse Point. It's an app that shows where cardiac arrest happened within the city. This is an app that will basically, once cardiac arrest happens, the app will show where the cardiac arrest is. It'll give people that are trained or not trained in CPR the location to go start CPR. And what we found through science, that the sooner we have hands on the chest, the higher probability that person will survive that cardiac event. It won't give you the location of cardiac arrest within a private residence. It's only in like a public area. So it'd be pretty awesome that more people in the community get that app so we can have some higher success rates with our cardiac arrest saves. And that's pretty much all I got. Anyone got any questions for us?
Yes. Am
Go
I
ahead.
on? Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you
can hear
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, officer, for your attendance. I'm a huge fan of Anchorage Fire Department. For a
We
long
appreciate
time.
the support.
You guys do a great job, but I have a question regarding, first question, fire hydrants.
Yep.
I noticed that my fire hydrant, which happens to be right across the street from me, about 100 feet away, is covered totally by snow. And there was a time when periodically fire hydrants were clear of snow during the winter. And I'm not sure why this hasn't happened. Actually, for a couple of years. My neighbor used to take care of that himself. It was on his property at his own time. But how do we get this taken care of? There's several fire hydrants on our street. I did call the fire department, and they turned me on to, I think it was the street department, but I can't remember. And they said they'd send someone, but nothing's happened. That's been some weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Anchorage Fire Department, we don't maintain the hydrants. AWWU maintains the hydrants. It's really for us, you know, if we are on like a medical call or a call that's less severe, like we will definitely take action to make sure those hydrants are cleared by us shoveling them out. But with AFD, we're running upwards of 40,000 calls a year. So it's difficult for us to, you know, a lot of times we get multiple calls at the same time. It's a lot of like public outreach. People within the community, a lot of people take ownership of the hydrants that are, you know, right outside their house or near it, if they're able to do so. But AWWU is really the point of contact with fire hydrants within the municipality.
Okay, so if you're contacted, there's no procedure to contact them to take care of this, sir?
I'm not entirely sure. I can give you my email and then forward that up to people that have some more power than I do.
That would be great if you could list it in the chat. Thank you.
Ooh, let me try and add it here. Make sure this comes through before.
Yeah, the other problem is, of course, not all fire hydrants have the whip that sticks up above the snow, whatever you call that. And the last thing we want is for you all to mobilize and then you can't find a fire hydrant, especially in a winter like this.
Absolutely. And we have GPS locations for all the hydrants within the municipality. So even if the hydrant is covered with a little bit of snow, we'll be able to find where that hydrant is. They're
Okay.
marked in our mapping system. But we do try and clear as many hydrants as we can, or have the community do the best that they're able to do to make sure that we have a easier access to getting those hydrants. And all right, that work for the chat?
I'll take a look, but yeah, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah,
And
and I'll forward that to my battalion chief, and that battalion chief will be able to answer a lot more questions concerning that than I'll probably be able to.
okay, thank you. And again, we appreciate your involvement, and be safe.
Oh, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any more questions to our fire station representatives that are here tonight?
I do have a question.
Okay, Dan.
The firefighter that was injured in the accident at Station 5, how is he doing? The person that broke his neck when he fell off the ladder?
Yeah, in all reality, I probably can't give out really any information on it because that's more like protected health information. But what I can say is he's doing very well, and we're very happy for that.
Okay,
Yeah, he's doing very well.
that's all I needed to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
You guys still accept donuts, right? In the morning?
Oh, usually we're pretty good. Thank you. Oh,
Okay, well, I guess that's it. And I know this time of year when so many people are using fireplaces and lots of snow everywhere, you know, there's hopefully people are being safe when they're doing fire pits and using their fireplace and doing all this fun stuff in the winter time. So
absolutely.
okay, well, thank you so much. And you guys
Yep.
are welcome anytime, you know,
Well, we
just
appreciate it.
let us know when you want to join in again.
Oh,
But you're
anytime.
welcome anytime.
You guys have a wonderful evening. Thanks for having us.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Okay, and that could segue into just that was distributed, an email that was distributed earlier today that APD has reached out to community councils, and also, we can make a request, a specific request for someone from APD to come in if we have specific things that we'd like to talk about. So no guarantees that someone will be available, but we certainly have that opportunity. So just keep that in mind if something comes up with regard to a specific item that we'd want APD to address. So I realized that I had skipped an item on the agenda. I went from announcements to the Station 5, and I didn't ask about what's new in Turnagain that we've added to our agenda, starting with our former president, Anna Brawley, last year. And so just a minute or two, if anybody wants to have anything to share about what's new in Turnagain with regard to any kind of neighborhood tidbits that anybody has to share. Doesn't look like there's anything new in Turnagain, except the millions of things that the community council is dealing with right now. Anybody have anything to share? Okay, moving on. We're going to segue into then the sorry, my cell phone is pinging. Just ignore that. Executive board report, and we do have a lot of things to cover, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. But that's kind of an indication of, just all the stuff that's going on right now. So as we announced at our February meeting, we still have 2 offices, positions on the board vacant, the presidency and secretary. So again, if anybody's interested in taking over on those 2 items, please let the current board know, please let me know, so that we can move forward with consideration of election at a future meeting. So many thanks, and always consider joining the board because we are busy. So Carolyn Hall is our delegate for the Federation of Community Councils delegate group this year. So Carolyn, if you could provide a briefing on the meeting that took place in February, that would be great.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thank you. Glad to be here. Just want to say I wasn't able to attend the entire meeting. I had another obligation that night, but I look forward to having these more regularly on my calendar so that I can block some time around them. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up my notes right here. And I'm actually probably going to be a second here. I apologize. I'm not entirely ready to give my report. Sorry, Kathy. I've been so focused.
That's okay. You want me to come back to you?
If you could, please. I just need to pull.
Come back.
Yeah.
Oh, that's no problem. Okay. No problem. Okay, because we've got a lot to choose from. So the next item listed on the agenda under executive board report is just there is a 10-year community council boundary review that we were notified by the Muni late last year, I believe. And so just received kind of an update with regard to that. They put together a working group, representatives from various community councils and various areas. No one from Turnagain is on this, but they are starting to meet, and they'll be discussing and taking a look if there's any proposed changes to boundaries around the municipal area. And Turnagain, the board's kind of talked about this. We don't foresee any changes in our boundaries, but we'll keep abreast of what this working group is looking at and just follow the process that the planning department is heading up. And so we'll keep everybody informed to see if there's anything that we may have some interest in. But otherwise, it's nothing we're working with now. Are you ready, Carolyn, or do you want me to go on?
No, I'm ready. Thank you for your patience there.
Okay. No problem.
So we had a couple of presentations. One was about the UMed destination plan. The municipal planner was there and he gave a very brief update on the study. It's a demand management study and it has an interactive website. There's going to be a lot more to come on that. I don't have a ton of notes on it at the moment. We also got a brief presentation about Title 21 updates from another municipal planner, where those updates are more focused on eliminating clerical errors and creating a process that's easier for builders to navigate. And then let's see, that ordinance with those Title 21 updates are going to be going to the P&Z Commission on April 10th. There was a presentation from the Anchorage Parks Foundation talking about the parks items that are on the ballot coming up in a couple of weeks. So there's, let's see, there is a vote about whether to create the Chugach State Park Service Area, which in the future could be used to fund improvements on municipal lands when accessing Chugach State Parks. It's not a bond necessarily, it's just a proposed service area. And there's a regular, not run-of-the-mill, but kind of run-of-the-mill parks bond on the ballot that includes projects from across the municipality. And then there were updates from the assembly from Suzanne LaFrance. I don't really feel like I need to spend a lot of time on that since Austin is here and she'll have her report. Margot Bellamy also gave a report for ASD, and I'm not sure if we have an ASD representative on the meeting right now, so I'll read her report real quick. And she said that at the time, the next meeting was on February 21st. They're going through preliminary budget items that include one-time funds from the state and federal governments and from savings account. That's the preliminary budget that they're working through right now. Let's see, they're working on advocacy with the legislature with increasing the base student allocation, also known as the BSA. The spring lottery is going to open soon for parents who want to enroll their children in certain schools. And there's a bond on the ballot this year for $37.8 million. And it's to be used on maintenance and upgrades to existing schools. It looks like the 2024 bond, so next year, may include funds for the Inlet View Elementary School. But again, that's a year out. And then we had a couple of standing committee reports. Let's see. Okay, and I believe that is all that I have at this time, but I'm happy to take any questions. I probably won't be able to answer them, but I can certainly take them and try to find answers for them and report back. Thanks, Kathy.
Certainly. Anybody have any questions for Carolyn? Not, thank you so much for that update. And hopefully I'll be able to zoom in on the March meeting, but I wasn't able to in February. So I'm really glad you're covering these things for us. Okay, next under executive board report is, I already did the thing. So Freight Advisory Committee, they met. Let's see, I'm not sure where my notes are on that, but anyway, they met yesterday and I went ahead and it was a special meeting. The Freight, they do meet, I think, quarterly, but this was a special meeting because there was a proposal to add several streets in Anchorage to give them put them under the category of a critical urban freight corridor. And if streets are given that designation, then there's federal money available to, I'm not sure what they would use it for, but enhance those corridors to ensure that freight usage on those streets would be compatible with how the streets are designed or built or et cetera. I noted that West Northern Lights from Minnesota east to Muldoon was one of the streets that was designated or proposed to have that designation. So it caught my eye and I wanted to join in to see if they had any discussions. I'd talked to Muni employee beforehand, and he said, I mean, normally they'll just vote on what's before them, but you never know. As they discuss it, they may decide to maybe extend that category westward and into the Turnagain area out to Postmark Drive. So he said, you better listen in. And so I did. But they actually literally didn't discuss the list at all. They moved to approve it. There was no discussion. The meeting ended in the blink of an eye, but under public comment afterwards, I did take the opportunity to express the continuing and ongoing concerns with regard to airport generated heavy truck traffic through Northern Lights in the Turnagain area. And so they appreciated, hearing about that, but didn't do anything with it. So just continue to follow anything that jumps out with regard to that particular topic. The municipalities did send out this year's traffic calming qualified and cold street lists, as they do every year at this time, and they were sent out with the meeting notice. There is something interesting on this. It lists Hillcrest Drive under the qualified street list, but it shows it falling in Birchwood. So I'm not sure if there's a Hillcrest Drive in Birchwood as well as Turnagain, but I think, and John and Marnie, you could address this, especially Marnie, you would know, we do know that there's some funding and some work that's planned for Hillcrest Drive, the Turnagain Hillcrest Drive. And I'm guessing this might be a typo, but I didn't have time today to kind of look into it. Otherwise, there are no other Turnagain streets on the list to get traffic calming funding for this year. And Anna, I see you have your hand raised, so please jump in.
Yeah, so I just Googled, it does look like there's a Hillcrest Drive that says it's in the Birchwood neighborhood. So, but it might be worth following up. That's zip code 99577. So it's close, but yeah. And then also just to mention, I had somebody contact me asking about Galactica Drive. And so I was looking at the list. I think it was last year's list, but it was that they wanted speed bumps on Galactica Drive. So I encouraged them to reach out to the council, explain the process. And I did notice it was on the call list. So just wanted to.
Yeah, and thanks. And actually we TCC, it was probably, I don't remember what year, but it was pre-pandemic, because that's how I define everything. So it was before pre-pandemic, where we did have residents of Galactic and Bridal Lane come to our council and request traffic calming. So we did pass a resolution and submitted that to the traffic department. They went through all the hoops that they do. They did traffic counts and so forth, and they rejected that. And so that's why it's on the call list right now. Hope, maybe at some point that would change, but they'd probably have to do another, renewed or updated traffic study before they would move on that. So that those neighbors have already approached our council and we work with them, but unfortunately it didn't come to any kind of fruition with regard to the results that they were hoping for back then. So anyway, next on the list is, if you'll recall, traditionally the Heritage Land Bank does a 1-year work program and a 5-year management plan that lists all the HLB property and where it's at in management and any proposals to either, acquire more or dispose of or etc. Nothing was done in 2022. But there is somebody with HLB working on that now. And the advisory commission did have a work session in February at their February meeting, where they started talking about potential updates to the plans. I wasn't able to attend that meeting, but they didn't take any action, and it'll morph into their March meeting. So I certainly intend to sit in on that Zoom wise and make sure that the HLB parcels in Turnagain, which are west of the airport and where the coastal trail runs through and the Sisson Trail loops and loop trails and all that wonderful wildlife habitat and buffering remain intact still at some point in the future. Hopefully they would become dedicated parkland, but right now they're in HLB land status. So we'll just continue to follow that. And at some point those will come out for public comment, and then we'll, go from there and provide input. With regard to the airport master plan stakeholder group, John Isaacs, would you like to jump in and kind of give a briefing on that?
Certainly. So we were notified by Craig Campbell, probably back in our meeting in December, that the airport was going to be updating their master plan for Ted Stevens International Airport. And this is a major master plan update. I know Kathy has participated in a number of these in the past, and they are going to be doing new freight studies and passenger studies to take a look at what the increased demand is. And typically the master plan covers sort of a wide range of proposed activities. So it might have to do with facility expansion, runway expansion, what might preferred uses of lands. So this is, a key opportunity for us to take part in and hopefully influence the plan. There's going to be two advisory groups. One is a stakeholder group, which has community council representatives on it. And the second, I think, is going to be sort of an airline tenant and airline user group. These meetings will be open to the public. And I think when we know that they're happening, we will make members aware of when and where these meetings are going to be so that people can attend. So in discussions with Kathy and the board, I have been designated as, the primary participant for Turnagain Community Council, with Kathy as the alternate delegate. And, we are going to work, hand and foot together to look at our, our position and what we want to try to get across in these plans. And, certainly Kathy will be attending all the meetings as well as I. So it is a good opportunity. From what I remember them saying, it's likely that these meetings would start in May, and there would potentially be 3 stakeholder meetings in the course of the plan, perhaps more, and perhaps some focus groups. One of the things that I think we want to do is, when we catch our breath a little bit, perhaps later this month or sometime in April, is hold a land use committee meeting to kind of talk about the airport in general, and allow members of both the committee and residents in general to identify airport issues and update our airport issues for participation in this plan. There's a lot going on in addition to the master plan, some of which Kathy will talk about and some of which I will talk about, but it's a great opportunity, and hopefully our opinions will be listened to.
Okay, thank you, John. Yeah, we'll try and keep everybody updated and informed as that process continues. I don't know if you were told at this point, John, but it's usually a multi-year process. It's a slow process. It usually takes, minimum 1 year, but usually bleeds into more than 1 year. So it's a long process, but it's something that it's critical that our community council become engaged in right from the start. And we have in the past and will continue to do so for this update as well. So, so thank you, John. Okay, let's see here. We're getting down to the wire here on these updates from the executive board report. So don't really need to discuss them, but if you saw all the attachments, the click here's on our agenda notice that Pamela Miller, who presented at our last month's meeting from Alaska Community Action Against Toxins, the report that they were working on when she presented at our February meeting was completed. And so she definitely wanted the council to have that and to make it available to our membership. And so that a press release and that was sent out with our meeting notice. And if anybody, wants to have that at a future meeting or want us to discuss that, we'll certainly consider it, but everybody can take a look at that. One of the things that stood out, unfortunately, was that, let's see if I can find it really quickly here. Well, let's see, of course, that would be too easy, but Lake Bernard and Lake Hood were in the top, they were 2 of the top 3. Here we go. The highest levels from their testing in 2021, 2022. The highest one was Lake Spenard at 952.2 PPT total PFOSs, and Lake Hood, which was 698.7 PPT total PFOS. And the third highest was Airport Lake in Fairbanks with 179.4. So clearly the water bodies at Anchorage International are far and above any, far more contaminated than any other site that this group tested. And you know, it's not a good thing to fall into that category. So it's a real serious issue that needs to be addressed. And of course, just as a reminder, these typically come from the, you know, the firefighting chemicals that they use in their training that they've done over the decades out at the airport. So so that's available for us now as a follow-up to her presentation last month. And we did receive a letter to the council from, let's see, I don't know why I have that one there. AMATS, because some of you may be familiar with the proposed downtown trail connection project that will start kind of by Ship Creek and then go out by the small boat harbor and then follow the coast north to Elderberry Park. It'll be built on the west side of the railroad tracks and the mudflats. And we were contacted and listed as one of the groups that they would like input, consultation for any historic properties that that we might be able to identify. And the irony on this one is they list all the entities that they've reached out to, and the only community council was ours, even though this is in the downtown community council boundary. So I need to reach out to them and just kind of question why they included Turnagain, but certainly it's probably nothing the council will weigh in on. But if anybody specifically is interested in that trail and know about some historic properties where that trail may be built, then you know, please let me know and I can pass that on because I've got the contact information. And then under land use committee, we received a similar letter related to Fish Creek Trail connection, which of course is in our boundaries. So where there's that. And then the one that I mentioned on that wasn't on the agenda that was mailed out was, I did get a phone call this afternoon from JJ Brooks. He just wanted to chat with me and give me a little bit of an update on where he was at. If you'll recall, he is the developer that is working with the municipality to acquire the eastern parcels on the Woodland Park subdivision there on the east side of Turnagain Street, across the street from Rustic Goat, that we dealt with pretty heavily last year. And you know, in the end of the assembly, we opposed that, but there was a compromise, and in the end, the eastern parcels will stay in municipal ownership, and we certainly hope to see them as dedicated parkland one day. And then the western parcels are available for JJ Brooks to purchase. So right now he is in the due diligence stage. He is working on, and he's doing some kind of extra work that he's paying out of his own pocket because the city gave him, you know, a sale agreement to purchase the property, but it had the contingency that any environmental contamination found on the site, the city would be indemnified. And JJ absolutely does not want to sign anything like that. So in the end, he's doing his own due diligence for the next few months. He's doing geotechnical analysis, some boring, as well as looking for contaminants. They're doing boring. So there could be bad soils, quote unquote, under there. He just has no idea. And there are electrical lines that are running underground through the land as well, the parcels that he would like to develop. So he's just trying to figure out if it's still viable to develop that area. And he's hoping that if all goes well and the results are fine, then he would move on to his next phase and, look at whether he would have to replat or not and determine the feasibility of developing the housing that he would like to. So that's where he's at right now. He would be at least 14 months until construction, once he's going through all this process and then formalizes any kind of purchase with the municipality and deals with potential replatting and that kind of thing. So I did indicate to him that when the timing is appropriate, we'd like some more information on some of his development ideas and what he's thinking of doing. And he absolutely wants to work with community council on this. And so it's just one of those things where we're just going to sit back and continue to communicate with him. And, if you've got any questions, you can let me know. And I'd be, I know I can feel free to contact JJ at any time or you guys can directly, but keep us in the loop. So does anybody have any questions with regard to that update? Okay, if not, we will move on to our regular reports. How are we doing on time? We're actually doing pretty well. So that's great. So now we'll move into our legislative reports, and I'm not sure who has joined us that might be providing any kind of legislative reports. Has there been anybody from our state senators or representatives for our area?
So
I am,
Kathy,
yeah, go ahead.
well, Rep Fields, Rep Armstrong typed their reports into the meeting chat. Sounds like they're in varying degrees of travel status this evening.
Okay.
Want me to read them, or do you want to read them or direct people to them, or maybe we should read?
Carolyn, Carolyn, if you wouldn't mind reading them, I would appreciate that because now I see what you're referring to. So yes, please.
Okay, so Rep Fields wrote let's see, he wrote, my family just got back from Juneau and I need to help unpack. So here's a quick written report. This week, the House Labor and Commerce Committee advanced my bill, HB 46, to strengthen the child care system. I also joined Reps Armstrong and Colomb in introducing a complementary child care bill, HB 89. Both HB 89 and HB 46 are now in the HSS committee. I believe that's Health and Social Services Committee. Senate leadership introduced legislation to restore defined benefit pensions and are thrilled we have this vehicle to work on together. I introduced legislation to set the PFD at no more than $1,000. That's HB 90. And this bill will have its first hearing Monday in Ways and Means. He apologized for not being able to stay on the call. He offers his cell phone, which is in the chat, 201-2895. Don't hesitate to reach out if you want to talk in more detail. So that was Rep Fields's report. And then Rep Armstrong, her report says, hi, everyone, busy weekend for legislators. We're all traveling home for the town hall on Sunday. Similar to Zach, I'm going to leave a quick update here for y'all because I will be boarding my flight when we get to ledge reports. This Sunday, all Anchorage legislators, reps, and senators will be hosting a town hall from 2 to 4 p.m. at UAA's Rasmussen Hall. On Saturday, March 25th, myself and Matt Clayman, along with Rep McKay, are hosting a town hall at the Anchorage LIO from noon to 1:30. That's at 1500 West Benson Boulevard. She says, I have just published my armchair legislator survey. Please make your voice heard. It's a six-question survey, and the survey link is right there in the chat. I'm working on several pieces of legislation around childcare, paid family leave, universal breakfast and lunch, mental health, domestic violence, and renewables. I am serving on state affairs, resources, and tribal affairs. She says, please call or text me at 907-280-9600 if you have questions, want to share ideas, or ask questions about current legislation. She shares her email address. And then she says, I meet with constituents every weekend. I'm in Anchorage, either at my home or at Writer's Block or an event like I mentioned above. If you are a group and would like to meet with me around an issue, I'm available to you. Please call or text so we can schedule a time. Thank you. That is it for what is in the chat.
This is Dave Donnelly. I'm just now concluding the HALO candidates forum, and I thought I'd call in and apologize for not being here at 6 o'clock, but I'm in the parking lot of the Alaska Zoo, and I would love to answer any questions people have about my school board race.
Well,
Kat-
thank you and welcome, Dave. We're kind of in the middle of our other, but I don't, unless anybody has, let me wrap up this legislative report agenda item. Does anybody have any comments or anything about legislative session, or want any turning in to do any messaging to our legislators? And of course, you all can feel free to do that on your own. And if not, we are running a little bit ahead of time. So if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and allow Dave Donnelly to just do a supplemental part of our earlier effort to do a candidate intro and Q&A. Does anybody have an objection, any objections for Dave to jump in and participate at this point? Looks like nobody does. So as we did this earlier this evening, we gave candidate 2 minutes to introduce yourself and then open it up for a few questions. So if you'd like to do that, Dave, go ahead.
Sure. Well, Turnigan's always been a special neighborhood to me. I was born here in Anchorage, and my mom was the nurse at Turnigan for years. She was one of the original 5 Anchorage school nurses ever hired, and had the honor to represent large portions of the Turnigan neighborhood when I was in the State House, State Senate. I'm in re-election to Anchorage School Board because my twins are in 9th grade now, and I want these schools to succeed. That's why I got into running for school board in the first place, because I was disappointed as a parent in what was happening in my twins' elementary school. Golly, people asked me back then, you were co-chair of Senate Finance. Why would you want to be on a school board? Well, let me tell you, I think the public schools are the foundation of America's greatness. We absolutely have to have a strong public school system to have a sustainable constitutional republic. We need citizens that are intelligent and educated to make the rational decisions about public policy questions, that we're empowered to make those decisions as Americans. So I believe in the public schools. I want them to succeed. I need them to succeed for my twins. I said my time on the school board, I've really tried to find out what went wrong with Anchorage schools. As a Diamond grad, our schools were great back then. And so I've identified several places. One was automatic grade promotion. I passed a resolution and changed that policy. It was a 5-2 vote to go from automatic absolute grade promotion to what's in the best interest of the student standard. And that's the new standard. I cast the deciding vote to get our kids back into classrooms after COVID. That was a 4-3 vote on an amendment that would have stopped it from happening for quite a while longer. I was right about the COVID matrix that the district used to shut down schools was wrong. It wasn't for a couple of months, but then the Department of Health agreed with me and said the matrix that was being used was inappropriate for schools. It was designed for nursing homes and absolutely not to be used for schools. I'm going to continue to try to identify the things we need to do to turn this district around and do things differently to better deliver education and get a better product for opportunities for all our kids. Be happy to answer any questions people got.
Okay, thank you so much, Dave. It looks like Jonathan Galen has a question. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi there, Dave. This question about, I haven't heard much about the disposition of Inlet View and what's happening with that.
Inlet View is on the new 6-year capital plan for the state by law requires every school district to have a 6-year capital plan. that was just voted on about 3 months ago. The board decided to continue, even though the voters rejected it, the last bond, continue the plan to tear it all down and build a brand new one. They also have 2 other schools scheduled to be torn down and rebuilt. I've opposed that consistently and said I support doing a major remodel for Inlet View. And my example for that is Turnigan Elementary. That was done back in 2017, I believe, and it's a great success. It's a great looking school now. And we ought to do the same thing for Inlet View, not tear it down to the ground and then move the location to a place that many of the residents of that neighborhood don't want it moved to. And then my amendment to the 6-year plan that was voted down by the board would have saved Anchorage taxpayers over $35 million by going to major remodels instead of tearing down old schools and building complete new ones.
Okay, thanks.
So it's scheduled to be on not this year's bond, but I believe the bond in the next coming year.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Brian Evans, you've got your hand raised. Do you have a question for Dave?
Thanks, Kathy. Hey, Dave, how are you? Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
You bet. Hey, so listen, I jumped on kind of late to the candidates deal, but can you just give us, in your opinion, we get all different kind of stories, but what's the story with the libraries and the books, and are the books with the pictures and stuff really available to kids? And can you just kind of give us your opinion on what happened? Because there's a whole bunch of dissension and ideas on what happened. I'd love to hear, tell us what really happened.
I think the biggest issue we're facing right now is transparency of the process for identifying and dealing with complaints from parents and citizens about what materials are being used in the school district. That includes the libraries. The district has adopted they have appointed a committee called the Controversial Concerns Committee that they're refusing to tell the school board or the public who's on it. They hold their meetings in secret. They don't keep minutes. They produce a final report, and it used to be on their website. They said this report was the final decision, and I objected to that, saying obviously the elected officials have the final decision in curriculum matters. That's part of our job. And they subsequently have amended the website. So there's this committee that is completely concealed from the public and who's on it and how they do their job. It's very concerning. I believe in an open process. I believe it probably violates our public meetings law, and I've objected to it. The district claims they have a legal opinion that defends their actions, and I've asked them for the board at the last meeting to make that meeting public. Make that opinion public. They haven't responded to that yet that I know of, although I haven't checked my email this afternoon. So that's number one concern, is the process by which parents and the community can object to any particular materials being. There have been some very concerning books discovered in our elementary school libraries, been brought before the board, identified what schools those were in, and subsequently, at least one of those books disappeared from the shelves of the library. The board was not told who made that decision or how that decision was made, but it was done. I have a copy of it here, in matter of fact, at the debate I was just at, I showed it. Subsequently, there was also another book that was actually formally objected to called George. That was objected to in April of last year. Although the policy is supposed to be dealt with, complaints are dealt with in 60 days, that they did not deal with that because they said, well, the committee's not active over the summer. So it didn't get dealt with till about November. And you can go on the website and read the report from the Controversial Concerns Committee that you don't know who the members are. You read their analysis of the concerns that were raised about that book and see for yourself whether you agree with it or not.
Hey, thanks for that, Dave. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else have a quick question for Dave? Doesn't look so. Thank you so much for jumping and even if it was belatedly, for joining us. And sorry about the conflict with another group wanting to hear from candidates, but the election is getting closer and closer each day. So we appreciate your input and participation.
thanks for your invitation. I greatly appreciate it.
Certainly. And if you want to lower your raised hand, I would appreciate
I
it.
will. I will go to
Okay.
my next meeting now.
Okay. Good luck. Have fun. Okay. Well, that was great that we had heard from one more candidate that's going to be on the April 4th mail-in ballot. Okay, well, unless anybody else has chimed in via chat from our legislative contingency, we'll move on to assembly report. So, let's see, there's Austin. Hey, welcome, Austin. Thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it quick. So a couple things that we passed at our last meeting, we made Juneteenth, and which is celebrated on June 19th, and Indigenous Peoples Day municipal holidays. It felt like the right thing to do because our holidays really show who we honor and celebrate, and it was a great opportunity to sort of expand what different events in our country we're honoring and celebrating every day. We had a lot of positive feedback and testimony in support of adding those holidays. So they'll be added for executive appointees and non-represented employees. So employees that are not part of unions. We're not allowed as the assembly to add holidays for union members because those have to be added via negotiation of an amendment to the union collective bargaining agreement. So we're hopeful that the mayor and his team will work to get those amendments completed. We also passed, and that was passed 12-0. We also passed unanimously an online checkbook ordinance. So the goal of that is to increase transparency around muni finances. The state has something similar and a lot of governments do. And I have the ordinance here, just kind of a run through of the things that will be up soon that will be publicly searchable for free. So these are things that you could submit a public records request on, but you might not have the time or money to do that. And you might, as a resident, just want to look something up quickly. So these things include current fiscal year unaudited revenue, including for monthly and including the preceded month, expenditures, and both for the current year and for preceding fiscal years, for procurement, municipal contracts. So the name and location of vendors, compensation, contract length, et cetera, and also information about payroll. And fund balance, which is basically what money we have left over in an account. So we call our money after the operating budget year passes, the calendar year, if there's any money left, we call that fund balance. So this will also list that and it'll be publicly available. So I know IT is working on it. I'm not sure exactly when it will be up and running, but that's coming online and that was also passed unanimously. Two things coming up that I want to mention at our next meeting on March 7th. One is 4 weeks of paid parental leave, which is a policy that I put forward along with Suzanne LaFrance and Meg Zalatel. This was something that the administration under the Berkowitz administration had been working on since the summer of 2020. And then I carried through, happily carried through with that and implemented the Muni's first paid parental leave policy just before I left as acting mayor. The great thing about parental leave is not only does it reduce infant mortality, infant hospitalization rates, postpartum depression for moms, increases engagement for dads with kids. It also is good for business. And so companies across the state and country are finding that implementing parental leave actually helps them retain and attract workers, thereby costing the company less money overall because they're not having constant turnover. The reality is, my wife and I just had a baby. Well, she had the baby, but a baby joined our lives almost 9 months ago. And so we've got to see firsthand sort of some of the pressures on parents. And most daycares, for instance, don't even take infants until they're 2 or 3 months old. So if you don't have any paid leave or you don't have enough leave saved up, you might literally have to quit your job to be able, there is FMLA, which is unpaid, but you might not have options and not be able to afford the costs of having a family. And this not only is good for families, but it's good for businesses. GCI just implemented the same parental leave policy 4 weeks in January. They came to spoke to us at our health policy committee earlier this week. They're one of the biggest businesses in Alaska and found that it was just good for business because employees were more willing to stick around. And the federal government under President Trump implemented a parental leave policy of 12 weeks paid leave. So 4 weeks is really the minimum. We're looking forward to bringing it back, and I'm hoping that we'll have a unanimous vote on that as well. The last thing I wanted to bring forward was homelessness funding, particularly for emergency cold weather shelter. I've been pretty disappointed just in general that things are taking us so long with the administration. You know, we saw a proposal. They've been there now almost 2 years, 2 long years, and we saw a proposal for a navigation center in East Anchorage, but really other than that, haven't seen any movement on homelessness and on creating a big comprehensive plan that the community can rally around and support. We have seen individuals and other organizations step up. I think Vic Malazzi is a board member of the Anchorage Affordable Land Trust that was just established, and that organization is doing great things. I think maybe he's going to give an update later on the work they're doing to convert hotels to housing so that we actually have places for folks to go. But we need to be doing more of that. Widener, which is a philanthropic organization, and well, they are philanthropic. They also do other things. And Rasmussen have put a lot of money paired with the ARPA funds that the assembly set aside and have successfully converted several hotels. And we now are looking forward to this summer having about 300 more units online. The solution to homelessness is housing, and I'm really hopeful that the administration can really get on board and come up with a plan that would get people into housing. But in the meantime, we just keep trucking along with private partners, the assembly does, to try to bring more and more of these properties online. The assembly's or the mayor's plan seems to be to stay in the Sullivan indefinitely. There's no particular plan that they've brought forward other than that. Staying in the Sullivan is not what the community wants, at least the feedback I've received, and it's definitely much more expensive than long-term solutions. So they've brought forward a appropriation asking for $4.7 million to keep funding the Sullivan and some other sites, some of which I think are absolutely necessary through the end of April. So we'll be voting on that on Tuesday. My big issue with the homelessness stuff, beyond just how long this is taking and the lack of a plan coming from the administration, is that the alcohol tax, which is where the fund source for this $4.7 million of a request, the alcohol tax, I was one of the sponsors of the tax that passed successfully after other iterations of it that didn't. And the thing that we added to it was prevention, because people said, we want programs that invest in early education. We want programs that, reduce the incidences of child abuse, sexual assault, domestic violence. And so voters approved a proposal that had those things included in it. What's been happening over the last couple of years is that the administration is not getting out grants for those programs. And then, not coincidentally ending up with extra money, and then putting extra money into things like this, which are not long-term solutions. So I've been just really disappointed with their implementation of the alcohol tax and lack of following through with what voters intended. So I keep speaking up about that. It feels like almost every meeting we're at. So we'll see. But at the same time, we have people who are unsheltered. So we need to provide shelter for them. But again, without a long-term plan, it is fiscally unsustainable. And it's really disappointing that that's where we are. So sorry to end on a sad note. And Sandy, I have to say, for a long time, I thought you were just sitting there super peacefully and quietly, but I realized that is your screen. Your screensaver is a picture of you that I thought you were just being very, very, very quiet listener. So anyway, I'll take any questions if there are some.
Hey, Quinn, Brian Evans, how are you?
I'm good. My first name is actually Austin.
I'm sorry, Austin.
That's okay.
So do you have a total over the last 24 months of what we've spent on this homeless problem, and what the assembly's allocated to the homeless problem?
I don't have that total. I mean, there's been a number of appropriations, but I think it's a little more complicated than just shelter because there are health services and other services that go into treating folks experiencing homelessness. So no, I don't have a total for you, but if you want to send me an email, I'm happy to send it to the administration. They're the ones that administer contracts, so they should be able to get that information for you.
That would be interesting, right? So we have an identified number of homeless people in the area, right? I mean, we have a kind of a target that we know. We've identified them as a group, and we've allocated funds to mental health and housing, and I mean, this number continues to grow, right? And I'm with you. This isn't, you can't use the Sullivan Arena for a long-term fix. I don't know, buying a hotel is a long-term fix. I'd love to see more churches and nonprofits get involved, right? And come back to helping the community where it needs to. I don't know that's the business for you guys, is to be allocating this. I'd love to see you do other things than kind of, fumble over this both between you and the administration. So I'm interested at some point, there's got to be some accountability. And how do we know that this is successful, right? At the end of the day, next December 31st, and we're in our meeting, and we ask you, Austin, so we spent another $20 million. How many people aren't homeless anymore?
Yeah, I mean, the hotels specifically, and maybe Vic wants to talk about this too, but that is a successful model. It absolutely is. Because the thing is, once you can get folks in housing, there are a lot of vouchers and other funding sources that are available that are not muni funding sources that can help. And a lot of folks, when you think of a homelessness or person experiencing homelessness, a lot of times people think of someone with substance abuse problems or someone who's doesn't really want to be a productive member of society. A lot of times it's families, it's women with young children, it's people who are working poor, who cannot afford to live. And I mean, if you look around here, look at rents. I mean, it's really expensive given how much you can make doing most jobs. And so I think it's just important to remember who these folks are and what types of residents and people we care about who are in our community experiencing this. So there's a lot of people who want to find housing, but can't for whatever reason, whether they need a voucher or they have a disability or they have some other challenge. And so the hotel conversions are successful because these programs are geared toward what people are experiencing and maybe accessing HUD funds, maybe accessing Medicaid funds. There are a lot of funds out there that are not just municipality funds. So I think all the solutions we should pursue are things that allow us to leverage other sources of funding. And that's what a lot of, you mentioned nonprofits, groups like Rasmussen, Widener, other nonprofits are very engaged and contributing really generously. The Muni is just a piece of this. I would say who's not really contributing is the state. We've had very little engagement or investment, basically none, from the state government. It's been the municipality and private actors, churches, nonprofits, et cetera, picking up the slack.
So do you see much involvement from the native corporations, right? The multi-billion-dollar corporations with all the big buildings in Anchorage that look down over the tent cities on Fireweed Lane, right? You have
I guess what I would ask you is, why are you asking about native corporations instead of corporations like ConocoPhillips or others? I'm just curious.
Well, just do you see all the buildings in town, right? I mean, Conoco is absolutely
That's not really responsive to my question to you.
Well, for me, it's that you look down from Siri, who built this giant tower, and right across the street is a homeless camp. And it's like, that's the only reason is you look across, and how do you look at your office building at a tent city and not go help?
I don't really understand the question. I think it's a veiled comment about Native people experiencing homelessness, and I'm a little concerned about that.
Not at all.
So people who go to the Native corporation thing, I don't really understand that. Native corporations are corporations, and so there are many corporations in our community, and should they be contributing generously? Absolutely, if they can. But I think targeting Native corporations is a confusing.
I use that example. I worked for the Odom Corporation for many years, and we took care. There was homeless across the street, and we would absolutely go over and take care because it was right outside our front door, right? And that's why I use that example. As I drive past that every day, and I just think there's so much money in that building. How can they not clean up their own street, right?
Yeah,
Not
I
about-
mean, I think
not
that's not
about
really
being
a
native-
question for
not
me,
about being
right? You're
native law.
asking me why private corporations aren't investing in cleaning up properties next to them. I can't really answer that, but I agree. I think everyone in the community needs to be engaged on this issue if we really want to solve it.
Agreed.
Merle, yeah, thanks, Brian. Merle, did you have a question?
I have a question for the assembly person.
Right? That's me.
Uh,
Go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. The assembly had passed something anywhere, which is going to allow people like that live in the neighborhoods like I live in, which is single family residents, to put additional units on the property. I'd like to know if what's involved. Can they be trailer houses that they're going to allow to go in there on these R1, what we would call single family residents? What is the building codes going to be like? And I also want to know what you're going to do about if you allow additional buildings to go on the property. What are you going to do about the parking issues? Most families here have 2 cars, or maybe more. And so what happens now? Could you just briefly give me what you think on that issue, please?
Sure. I think what really drove the ADU ordinance is, kind of to Brian's point and some of the questions he was raising, affordable housing is such an issue in Anchorage, and particularly for young people and for elderly people. And so ADUs are a good opportunity for more affordable housing. So if you have a little 1-bedroom unit on your house and you can charge, $900 a month or whatever it is, versus having to rent a 2-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house for $2,500 a month, you can actually afford to live. And so I think as an assembly in general, we have supported efforts to implement additional forms of affordable housing. And so one of those is expanding where you can do ADUs. I'll put in the, and I think in general, that's a good thing. I don't think that this is going to result in, a bunch of trailers on people's properties. There's still limits on what you can do, what you can build. And the truth is that, Steph, my wife, and I looked at building an ADU for my mom. So kind of exactly what I was describing as she's getting older. It's so expensive to build them. It's actually not quite common that people are doing it. I wish it were cheaper, but building materials and labor is so expensive in Alaska that I doubt we'll see as many as honestly I would like to see, because I think they're good for communities. But let me put you, I'm going to put in the chat a link, and tell me if you can't open it, you can email me and I can send it to you too, but to the document, because then you can look at it and it'll show all of the changes that we made. But some of them are allowing the ADUs to exist in additional zoning areas throughout the municipality. So it's not just in certain spots. And in terms of parking, in most neighborhoods, it's not a problem. Most residential neighborhoods, parking is not really an issue. So I think if it is, let us know. And if there's some safety issue, then code enforcement will deal with it. But I don't think in general, that's really a big problem here. So let me send you the document. And then if you have other questions, you can follow up with me afterward.
Just one comment. This all came up at an old guys luncheon this week. And a number of have realized that they could put an additional dwelling on their lot. For instance, we got large lots here in the Broadmoor State subdivision, so they can put in a detached building, whether it's going to be a trailer house or whatever. What's going to prevent that from happening, if anything?
Yeah, I think it comes down to individual situations. Most people who are looking to have an ADU and want to rent it out probably don't want to dump an ugly trailer on their property. I actually haven't looked at the ordinance recently, so I don't remember what the exact requirements are, but I'll pull it up and I'll share it with you. But I think there are certain design characteristics you have to have. Again, ADUs are generally kind of expensive, so I think that I wish we would see more of them, and we probably will, but most of them are added on or above a garage, and there'll be a new unit, which is newer, so it supports jobs, people building them, and also tend to provide nice housing. So I'm not as concerned about that. If you come back to me in 20 years and that's a big problem, then we'll fix it, but I really don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, thank you so much. Looks like we probably should go ahead and move on unless anybody else has one last quick question for Austin.
I do.
Steve Montooth, quickly.
Austin, I appreciate the fact that you again described the whole total population and categories for homeless. And I just wish we could continue to do that. And I'm not sure how we do that, because most people just see homeless as the drunks or the folks who have mental illness and on the street. And that's also an issue of shame for people who see that in the community. So thank you very much for doing that. And it's just, people don't see it, the total population.
Yeah,
So
thanks.
whatever you can continue doing.
Thanks for that, Steve. I think as a municipality, we've not done a great job of communicating around homelessness, and we've not done a great job of communicating who's experiencing homelessness. And it's because it's complicated. It changes every day, and we do an annual point in time count, but that's not reflective of every single season. And then there are constant changes happening, right? We might have a new building that's available and folks are moving in there, and then there's a shift in need. And so it's hard at every moment to say, this is exactly the type of person who's in need of what, but we need to be better about doing that. I mean, it's been a big request of mine to Felix as chair of the Housing and Homelessness Committee. Like, how can we tell the public a better story? Because we owe them more information, and we need to be able to say, like the questions you're asking, Brian, how much have we spent? How much does it cost? What are other alternatives? What do those cost? I believe after years of working on this that we are on the right track right now, but my belief alone, we should have more materials to share. So anyway, I totally own that. And that's on years and years of us just sort of getting so mired in the work that we're not stepping out into the big picture to talk about all the things the public cares about.
Okay, thank you so much, Austin, for all your work and for attending our meeting this evening. So I think we will go ahead and move on to school board report. And I'm not sure if we have anybody from the school board attending this evening. I don't believe so. So no school board report. And is there anybody from the mayor's office who is attending our meeting? Oh, sorry, I heard a voice. Anybody from the mayor's office? No. Okay. Okay, so we will move on to airport report, and let's see.
Hello. There's Megan Peters here.
Oh,
Can you guys hear
Megan,
me?
hello. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me. So I sent out the monthly report for the airport the other day. There's a lot going on in terms of the parking world. First and foremost, we are having a job fair on March 25th. That is a Saturday. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We're going to be doing a lot to advertise that job fair. It is a job fair not only for actual airport state employees, but also our partner agencies, mostly in the transportation and logistics, tourism type industries. We really need our partners to be well staffed so the airport can run as smoothly as possible. Everything from ground handlers to the fuel farm, to Sky Chefs. There's so many different companies around the airport that really are critical partners in keeping us moving. So we will have dozens of vendors there on March 25th. So send anybody and everybody our way for that, and the parking will be validated for attendees. The parking situation at the airport, on most days, it feels like we're either near or at capacity for parking. And unfortunately, it's just going to get worse because we have about a 50-year-old parking garage structure that needs to have revitalization and rehabilitation done to it. So we're starting to put out signage, letting people know that half of the parking garage is going to be shut down throughout the summer. It's going to start with the top 2 levels. And then when those are done, they're going to flip it to the bottom 2 levels for that construction to take place there. So the parking this summer is really going to be horrendous. And we're trying to push out the message as best we can so people can start thinking to have a plan in place to actually get to the airport in plenty of time to make sure that they catch their flights or they're able to pick up their passengers with as much ease as possible. Whether that if you're picking up, it'd be great for people to try and use the cell phone lot or perhaps Earthquake Park or maybe one of the nearby restaurants that are close. So as soon as you know your person is ready to go, you can easily pick them up without being a part of the congestion on the curb. It's going to be a little painful, but we're really trying to spread the message. And when we do shut down the top layers of the parking garage, if vehicles have not already been removed by April 1st, they will be towed and relocated to a different area on the airport. So if somebody comes back from a trip and their car's not there, if they contact Republic Parking, they'll be able to assist them getting to where their car was moved to so the construction wouldn't be stalled. Also, the changes of stay lengths has occurred for the parking garage. We've changed everywhere for the airport parking, whether it's long-term parking or short-term parking or north lot or south lot. Everything is now 15 days. There's a lot of people that come in from like Kenai or even the valley that utilize the long-term stay parking. So that's going to be a little bit of difference. There are plenty of businesses off airport that do provide shuttle service to the airport if you want to park a car. It's just spreading the word as best we can is really important. And so if the community councils can talk to their neighbors, let them know, just keep pounding on that message so everyone can at least appropriately prepare for it. PFAS testing, that process is still ongoing. There are still a handful of outstanding results that they have not got back yet. Once all the results are in, there will be a publicly available report to include maps of generic sample locations to give people an idea what the lay of the land looks like. We are in communication with homeowners if they have questions about the samples that have come back to them, and we put them in touch with the people that can best answer their questions, whether they're health related, whether they're environmental related. We try and triage inquiries coming into us as best we can so we can put you in touch with the person you actually want to talk to that has the knowledge of the topic you want to talk about when it comes to PFAS. Seaplane, Lakewood Seaplane Base, there was a change to transient parking at Lakewood. It is now a flat rate of $10 per day. There is going to be a Lakewood user group and town hall meeting. It will be public, online public noticed, but that hasn't happened yet. The date for that user group meeting for Lakewood and the town hall meeting is April 3rd. I believe they changed the time on it to evening instead of middle of the day, but we'll make sure that we send out the notice to the community council members as well as just simply public noticing it so people can participate in that meeting if they would like to. I think everything else on the monthly update is a little bit of an evergreen. Do you have any questions for me that I can try and answer or write the questions down and get back to you later with answers on? That was a lot, sorry.
Well, thank you, Megan. Does anybody have any questions for Megan? Jonathan, you've got your hand raised.
I do, Megan. I have 2 quick questions. Number one, I'm involved with a firm that has small sprinter-sized vans, and we use the commercial lane to pick up clients frequently.
Okay.
Is there going to be any change to that, which has gotten very busy?
I'm
Go ahead.
hoping there's not. My biggest concern with the parking garage being reduced by half of its capacity is it is going to force people to do something other than park. So people that would have parked and then walked in, they're probably going to move to the curb and just clog that up, which could make it more difficult for people to go in to pick people up, as well as leave after they pick people up, which is why we're really trying to tell people to come up with a plan. So hopefully we will not have that issue. But there's the construction is inside of the south terminal parking garage. It is not like last summer, sir.
Are you gonna send messages to the businesses of record that have permits, commercial permits?
I
to the
believe our
airport?
operations department is still working with that outreach. We did send out a press release today to the news media that had a little bit more in depth on what was happening with the parking garage. But you should be hearing from the airport through operations if they think that there's going to be some sort of impact. I think
Okay,
it's mostly just for awareness right now, sir.
last quick question.
Sure.
The answer is easy, yes or no. Is the airport and the state gonna finally start doing something about repaving Lakeshore Drive?
I believe there is a project for that this summer. I was just talking to Mr. Tim Coons, who works over there at Lake Hood and helps us out in operations specific for Lake Hood. And I believe he mentioned to me today that they were going to be starting for Lakeshore Drive and, oh, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the other one. But they will be doing some paving. I just don't know the totality of the project, and that'll definitely be in the next update for next month. I just learned about that today.
Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, Dan, you have your hand raised.
Excuse my voice, but what is the status of the new not terminal, but the air control tower and relocating C parking to Echo parking?
So that is something that is going to likely have a presentation by the FAA on at that April 3rd meeting. I believe they are going to have some kind of PowerPoint. That project, it's not a development that's being undertaken by the actual airport. That's being undertaken by the FAA. So they're the ones controlling that project and have the latest updated information. I know it's still in the process, but I think the best information will come out from the FAA at that April 3rd meeting.
Okay.
And I believe it's going to be scheduled for 7 p.m., but without having that in front of me, I can't swear to it. I just know that the time changed sometime today. Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Okay, thanks. And John or Marnie, you want to chime in now?
Yeah, I'm just going to mention, I am going to say something about the FAA environmental assessment tower relocation and some recommendations we should consider as Turnagain Community Council under the land use report. So I'll go into more detail, Dan, for that under that item.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that is all, everybody who had a question. So thank you again, Megan. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
As always, we, definitely want updates on some of these airport lease proposals that are still in play. But
to my knowledge, it's the same as last time, and I haven't heard of any type of movement or change in any status as of yet.
Okay, and I know the FedEx expansion in particular will be covered under our land use committee report as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. How are we doing on time? Looks like we're pretty well sticking to our agenda as far as time goes. So I don't see Robin Ward, but I see Victor Malozzi has joined us, and I believe you are also with Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust. So if you would like to discuss the update that you've got, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And thank you, Austin, for all the work that the Assembly's been doing on the homeless issue and housing issues. The Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust was created somewhere in about November. And we were created because earlier in the year, the Assembly had $11.8 million of ARPA funds to deal with housing issues. And they elected to provide those funds as a grant to the Rasmussen Foundation or their designee. And we became the designee. The plan was to create a land trust to not only manage the funds and buy facilities, but also to own the facilities. Part of the issue when this, and I've come into it a little late and I'm trying to catch up on things, but part of the issue in trying to deal with this last year was that there are nonprofits that were available to deal with some of the homeless issues. And they had funding to deal with it, but they really didn't want to own the real estate. They were in a business to deliver services. They weren't in a business to own buildings. And at the end of the day, the trust was created to essentially own real estate. And as the Assembly approved that and transferred and approved those funds for the purchase of facilities, at the same time, earlier in the year, the guest house downtown was purchased with a combination, I think, of ARPA funds and philanthropic funds, et cetera. And that's 130 units. Matt Scholes at First Presbyterian volunteered to create an LLC to acquire and own that facility. And it was with the understanding that they didn't want to own it forever, but a trust would be created to deal with this issue. So the trust was created in early December. We signed the grant agreement. Well, earlier than that, we ended up we had our nonprofit status granted by the IRS. We signed the grant agreement with the municipality. We received the $11.8 million in December, and probably about a week or so after we received the funds, we closed on the Barrett Inn, the 96-unit facility that's been sitting on Spinard, pretty much fenced in, I think, for the last couple of years. And we also acquired the membership interest in the LLC that owns the guest house downtown. And in January, we closed on the Lakeshore Inn, which is in the Spinard area, pretty close to the Barrett Inn. We have a board of directors. Obviously, there are 8 members. My name is Vic Malazzi, and I've been in banking all my life up here, first with National Bank of Alaska, and later on as a founder of Northland Bank. And at the time, I was chair of the Park and Rec Commission and pretty active in the community. So for me, this is pretty exciting in terms of moving this forward. But this is not homeless housing. This is rental housing. And the definition is low to extremely low income individuals. And that is pretty much determined by not only by income levels, but also by the grants that are the vouchers that are available. The vouchers that are available through Alaska Housing, there are federal vouchers, and I think some Alaska Housing vouchers allow for about $840 for an individual to use to have a rental property. There are no facilities like that in town right now. And we are in the process of moving forward and dealing with contractors to maintain the facilities and also to provide services to the residents in the facilities. To give you an example of how this works, because it is much more expensive than just owning a rental property, because at the end of the day, we own rental property and we have contractors that deal with with housing and with the individuals. But as that moves forward, we're going to have the ability over hopefully in the next month or so as we move forward, but to start opening up rooms for individuals in the system that have vouchers but cannot find any housing. So that'll help some of that pressure. We have self-pay as an example down at Guest House. There's 130 units, and I think we have about 20 some people that are self-pay. They have minimum wage jobs, and but they have a place to live, and they have a place to store their stuff and be able to go to work and clean up and all that. And many times what happens in that type of situation that we're seeing is that a lot of these hotel conversions have 2 queen beds in them. So you'd have a couple of individuals that would team up, and for $840, they split it halfway, and they can actually work and survive. So we're moving forward with this process. It's very complex. We're only going to be able to solve a small piece of it in terms of the body, the number of people that we're going to be able to absorb out of the system over the next couple of three or 4 months, because these people, the individuals that come here, sign leases. They go through the interview process. We have restrictions, no sex offenders. No one has been convicted of dealing with methamphetamines, because that contaminates a whole variety of things. So we're very strict in terms of the leases that individuals sign. And in addition to that, there will be 2 people full-time at the facility 24 hours a day, a manager and another individual. And that doesn't include the support services provided by some of the social services out there to connect people with jobs, to connect people with food stamp, to help them with whatever their situation is. So we're pretty excited as this is moving forward. We had a board meeting this morning. At this point, we don't even have an employee. We're doing this with the board and with Robin Ward, who is a contract individual, but we have no full-time employee. And our goal is to get someone that'll be at meetings like this on a monthly basis to update people in terms of what's going on. At the end of the day, we want to be very good neighbors. And to give you an example of some of the things that we're going to be able to do because of what the assembly did, the Barrett, as an example, is a 96-unit facility, and they have parking for probably 96 cars. Well, the people that we're serving really can't afford cars. And to give you an example, with 130 units downtown, we were at the Downtown Community Council a couple of nights ago, and the manager, Kyle, was there. I asked him the question, well, how many people have cars in the facility? And I knew it was about 10. And he said, no, we only have 8 individuals out of 130 that have cars. We don't need all that parking space. What we're going to do, what the plan is right now, and we'll see how the engineering works out, but we are going to do it because we have funds available to improve the properties. We're probably going to take a good piece of that parking lot between the 2 buildings at the Barrett, rip out pavement, put in some good soil, sod, some nice trees, and some picnic tables. And then what you end up doing is creating a nice environment for individuals to live. It's a place for them to get out, and picture you in a situation like that where you have a place to live, which you're really happy about, and have a place to shower, etc. But at the end of the day, it's still a small efficiency. Some with sinks, some without sinks. So people are going to need to get outside. And what we want to end up at the end of the day is providing housing for individuals that need it, that can pay, either self-pay or have some source of payment, whether it's a voucher, whether it's Social Security, whether it's wherever it comes from, because there are a variety of sources of funds available, but it's kind of a complex process. And there are probably individuals out there that are eligible for some type of assistance, but they're just not aware of it. And they need to connect with somebody that knows the system to get them together. That's the plan anyway. That's where we're at. Out of the 96 and the 45 over to Lakeview, because of double beds, I don't know what we're ultimately going to be able to take, but I'm hoping we're going to be able to take somewhere around 175 individuals, with some people doubling up. But until we go through the process and go through the interviews and work with various social agencies that have coordinated all this process, we just don't know. We're pioneering, really, we're pioneering. So at any, I tried to be brief. It's as Austin knows, you all know it's a very, very complex issue. But if anybody has any questions at all, please ask, because we're going to be as open as possible. We don't even have we don't have a website yet, so we can't even could put on anything like that, but ultimately we will, and we'll have a full-time employee that will be at these meetings every month when the meetings happen. So that is the plan. And if anybody has any questions or anybody has any comments, please ask, because this is an open deal. There's nothing to hide, anything specific. If I don't know the answer, I'll get it to you. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much, Victor. That's a lot of information to take in. Does anybody have any questions? I guess I'll jump in, and I was encouraged to hear that you will have 2 people on site, a minimum of 2 people on site at any given time, because one of the proposals that didn't end up taking place, but was proposed in the past for a hotel that's now converted into something else, but right on the Turnagain border, there was going to be no oversight. It was literally, this is housing. We're not going to do anything but provide housing. And I think that, you certainly expressed that these people need housing. They also need help in some ways with regard to, support services. And so I think that that's an important element to make sure that there's some kind of oversight. And if there are any problems, and we certainly hope there never would be, with regard to the surrounding areas, businesses and residential areas, that then we know there's a place we can go, there are people we can go to express our concerns and see what solutions might be able to be, how things might be able to be resolved. So appreciate all of the efforts, and it sounds like a good plan moving forward.
Yeah, I'd like to address a couple of things that you talked about, because it's, the impact on a neighborhood is one of the things that we look at immediately. How is this going to fit in? And one of the issues came up, and as we went through this process, food becomes an issue in terms of either preparation or however it works. Well, I think we're going to contract with we're in the process of contracting with one of the food service providers that provide packaged foods that has a grant. So we'll be able to provide delivered food to individuals, so they're not on the street panhandling or not going to the 7-Eleven just buying potato chips. And at the same time, there'll be washers and dryers available, and washers and dryers will be free. And in addition to that, we'll also have soap there, so they can individuals wash their clothes. We're dealing with individuals that every dollar is a precious dollar. So if you withhold something like that, and you charge the few dollars that you make in quarters, doesn't really, it's meaningless compared to what you're trying to do overall. So those are the things that we're going to be looking at, and as it develops, we're kind of building this model as it moves forward. And if we go down the path and something's not working the way we think, we're going to turn around, and as we make any changes, we're going to be here at the community council telling you what's going on. But at this point, we have 2 individuals that are staying at the lakeshore that have vouchers that are kind of watching the property. We also have a security service. We have plowing, etc. Somebody watching the property. And at the Barrett, we've been tearing out some of the old everything that was there for I don't know how many years. It's taken us a while to clear it out, but we're going to start moving forward on that pretty quickly. So that is the plan. As always, everything takes longer than you think, but it is moving forward.
Okay, so there are already people staying, renting at the old Lakeshore Hotel?
Yeah, they've been in there, I think, for 2 weeks. We acquired that January 31, and our concern, we don't want to leave vacant for sure. And we ended up getting 2 individuals that I don't know who they are, but the way the systems work, they had vouchers and are very responsible individuals. So we took 2 people out of the system, and at the same time, there's oversight there, so we don't have vagrants and people trying to break into the doors and that type of thing.
Okay, Brian Evans, you have your hand raised.
Hey, Victor, so when do you see the Barrett opening up? What's the kind of final open date for that place to be?
If I had to guess, I'd say we're probably going to be taking our first tenants in 30 days, because there's some construction that needed to be done. The day that we closed, or 2 days after we closed, we had a huge snowstorm, and it ripped out part of the roof. And the first thing we had to do was get rainproof roofing in there to patch the roof so we didn't flood things out. So there's been some issues, but now we do have it under control, and we're going to be moving the process. But we're trying as fast as we can to get things in gear. It's tough to start something from scratch with no personnel or anything, but we are moving forward for sure. Robin Ward is actually doing the majority of the work on this.
The second question, in all my rental properties, I have a zero tolerance for smoking on the premise or within 100 feet of the building, as well as drug use, right? Any kind of issues with the police or drugs and you're out. Do you have that same policy for the people that stay at these places?
Yeah, actually, we have a couple of policies. One, you can't prevent people from doing that. Well, a non-smoking policy for sure. Not only in the facility. I'm not really sure in the policy how far beyond the building it works. I can get it. I'll find out the information. I'll get it to you specifically. I just don't know, Brian, and I don't want to throw out a number.
No, you're fine. But there's no smoking in the building.
No smoking in the building at all. No. No, zero.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Well, I think that we need to move on with our agenda. So thank you again, Victor, for sitting in. I was expecting Robin Ward this evening, but I'm glad you attended. You were able to attend in her seat. And so thank you, and we appreciate it. And, hopefully get some updates as they as they occur in this area. So
yep.
Great.
We're hoping we're hoping at the next meeting we have an executive director hired, and at that time we'll probably jointly join the meeting. We'll see how it works, but we're definitely going to be active, and you will see me again.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay. Let me write that down. Okay, next item on the agenda is TCC letter approval consideration of comments with regard to the FedEx expansion environmental assessment scoping, which is a mouthful, but certainly part of the process of some of these airport projects that are going on out at North Air Park. So Isaacs take the lead on this presentation, and Brian Evans, if you could remove or lower your hand, that would be great.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. A little bit of background. FedEx is proposing to expand their operation into the wetlands to the south of their existing facility. And they held a scoping meeting, I think it was on February 16th at the Coast Inn for an environmental assessment associated with this, which is their NEPA compliance. And Steve Montooth, Gene Belosky, and I attended that. And it took a little while to kind of figure out what they were proposing to do, because it wasn't very clear for their boards. But what they're proposing to do is they're relocating some of their existing operations. They're taking their propeller-driven aircraft, which currently serve communities in Alaska, and they're moving them from behind their main building to a new building and a new parking area in the wetlands to the south of the FedEx facility. And they're going to be doing a couple of things there. One of this is it's going to move those existing aircraft closer to Anchorage neighborhoods, because now, not being behind the FedEx building, they'll be right along Postmark Drive. They said it's not going to increase the number of aircraft, it's not going to increase the hours operation, and it's not going to increase any of the trucks that are currently using Northern Lights out of FedEx. They are doing some investigations into contamination, and they do know they have a PFAS plume that's kind of moving under that site. They're proposing to put in a carbon remediation system. And so we put together some scoping comments, which are due on March 20th. And I think Kathy attached the draft letter as part of the documents going out. So essentially the scoping letter, it does a number of things. It sort of outlines what we understand as the scope of their expansion, identifies some of the things that we are concerned about, including the area of impact analysis we would like them to look at, and look at some of the typical impacts we've been concerned about in general with the airport development, including increased ground noise in Turnagain neighborhoods, increased cargo traffic on West Northern Lights, increased PFAS and other contaminants that may be generated on site and potentially go off site, filling in postmark bog wetlands, which are Class A wetlands, and what the hydrological impacts might be, and also talking about what might be any increased air quality degradation, and finally cumulative impacts. So we have a letter that has been crafted to be our scoping comments, and I'm assuming, Kathy, that the action tonight is for council approval of that letter.
Yes,
so maybe, I guess,
that would be correct. And one of the things that we want to emphasize is everything in this letter, TCC has already approved. We submitted comments to the airport when the lease application public notice came out last year. And so we on that, and we crafted comments on the topics that John just laid out and submitted those during that process. And now this project is moving forward as John described, and they will have to do an environmental assessment, but they want input on scoping before, so they can take that into consideration of what their environmental impact or environmental assessment should cover and include and look at. And so that's kind of what this is all about. So we took our previous comments and pretty well just regurgitated them into now this letter that John said, is due by comments due by March 20th. So, so if I could, and thank you to John and Steve, and I don't believe Jean's online here for attending that scoping meeting. So if I could have a motion to approve TCC comment letter that was sent out with a meeting notice, and then we can discuss anything specifically that's in it if you need to do that.
This is Carolyn. I'll move to approve.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks,
Easy.
Dan. All right. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything they would like to add to the discussion with regard to TCC's input on at this stage of the game for this project? One of the I might just add one of the things that John didn't mention, but is actually fairly critical and something that we pointed out in on our previous comments is the combination of this proposal, the FedEx expansion proposal in Postmark Bog, and the Alaska cargo and cold storage development in the remaining portion of Postmark Bog. Having both of those done, cumulatively, the impacts are going to be pretty substantial, and it will take up, I think, pretty well the entire wetland footprint that exists now, and these are Class A wetlands. And so that's why Turnagain CC has really emphasized over time the cumulative impacts of, not just one specific development, but multiple developments at North Air Park, in addition to the ones that we know about, land leases that are being looked at with regard to Turnagain Bog for Lake Hood seaplane base expansion projects. So that's emphasized pretty heavily in this letter. So does anybody have any comments or want to discuss what's in this letter?
I do, Kathy. This is Brian. Hey,
Yeah,
hey,
right.
John, so is the property they're talking about, so is it behind the training center? Is it to the? So across Postmark where the FedEx training and the post office are, is it that group, that piece of wetlands right behind there?
No, it's on the other side. It's on the west side of Postmark. And if you look at the sort of the area between the runway and Postmark Drive, it's kind of that undeveloped parcel just south of FedEx. That's where they're proposing to do it.
Got it. Okay, so that, I mean, it's kind of just, yeah, it's like an island there.
Yeah, it's an island of undeveloped Class A wetlands.
Yeah, no, I can see everybody targeting that piece of land
Yep.
because it's right in the middle.
Yep.
And so our desire, and just as a group, is to keep that the way it is, have just responsible use of it. I mean, what's our end result?
I mean,
We
I
got
don't know that, we're saying that as a group. I think, there is a proposal to develop that. And so part of the environmental assessment, and I think part of the comment letter is to do things to minimize, avoid, or mitigate the impacts of that development as much as possible. So we do suggest some mitigation in that, we're not saying don't develop it. We're saying that, in your environmental assessment and your potential mitigation, try to do things to, avoid, minimize or mitigate impacts.
Okay.
If I may jump in here, my main concern is the containing the PFAS contamination that's in this area, because this used to be where the fire was the training ground for the fire people on the airport, and they used a lot of PFAS in this area, and this area is contaminated and it needs to be contained, and that needs to be part of this our comments back to them, that they contain the PFAS so it doesn't spread into the rest of the Turnigan bog, which is on the east side of Postmark Drive.
And Dan, I think those are reflected in the comments to some degree, because they did mention at the meeting that they were going to be installing a carbon remediation system on the parcel adjacent to Postmark Drive, but they didn't provide any detail on what it was going to be or how it's going to work. And so I think in our letter, we're requesting to see, add more information on what they're proposing to do and how that indeed is going to work.
Yeah, the chemical engineering part of me wants to look at that for
No
sure.
kidding. Yep.
Yeah, especially, if you participated in last month's TCC meeting, we had 2 presentations on the PFAS at the airport, both by DOT as well as Pam Miller with Alaska Community Against Toxins, ACAT. And so it's a big issue now, and the airport is recognizing it, and how construction of FedEx's expansion, the actual construction in that contaminated wetland area, as well as Alaska Cargo and Cold Storage, assuming that both these projects jump through all the hoops and are approved. A layperson like me really can't comprehend how they can safely do that and how they can contain the PFAS. Since I'm married to a chemical engineer, I think he can help out maybe in that area for all of us, because it's going to be technical and it's got to be proven, because if there's any kind of leaching that goes and their scoping information that they indicated at that scoping meeting, and John, you can elaborate on this, is they have detected a plume of PFAS contamination flowing towards Postmark Drive.
Yep.
And if it kind of jumps that area into Turnigan Bog, which we are on record and have been for several decades now, we are opposed to any more development in Turnigan Bog, because that literally is in our back door. And so that, and then Hood Lake, Jones Lake, Hood Creek in the Turnigan neighborhood, all of that could potentially be contaminated if this isn't done perfectly. And I don't know if the technology exists for that to take place now or not. The environmental assessment is going to have to convince, I think, the public that can be done and will be done safely.
Well, one could argue that plume is there and is moving. They're obviously going to be doing additional ground disturbance. It is an opportunity for them to put in that containment system, and we'll see how it works. The way the scoping comments work is that they will consider those comments in preparing the environmental assessment. I think they indicated, and Steve might have heard this, that they'll potentially have an environmental assessment draft available maybe sometime as early as late May. And then they would have another public hearing on that and sort of, respond to those comments. So, we'll see where this goes.
So our desire is to allow the build out. We just want to make sure that it's done responsibly and properly when it's done. I mean, the cat's out of the bag. That piece is the only thing left in the middle of the airport. And I so agree that they've got to do it right. But I mean, PFAS has got to be all over that place, isn't it? I mean, before we started testing for it?
Certainly, certainly there's a lot of PFAS there. Yeah.
Hey, Kathy?
Yes, Brian. No, excuse me, Jonathan. Yes, go ahead.
John, I'm still unclear on exactly the location we're talking about. Could you elaborate that quickly?
So where the existing FedEx facility is there on the west side of Postmark Drive.
Yes.
Okay, and so if you go immediately to the south there's an undeveloped parcel of land that looks somewhat brushy, but is also wetlands. And that is the area that they are proposing to develop.
And that is the west side of
Postmark. Yes, it's west of the road. It's between the runway and Postmark.
Yeah,
Okay.
just if you
Is
see,
that
if you know
adjacent
where-
to where some of the giant jets, the apron there to the east?
Well, Jonathan, essentially it's, where the existing FedEx facility is located, there west of Postmark Drive. It's just expanding their development to the south into wetland, into the area that's not developed now, just south of their existing facility.
Okay, yeah, I never
It's-
thought of that as a wetlands. but-
Jonathan, it is east of where those 747s, the independent 747s are parked.
Gotcha.
There.
Okay,
And the taxiway.
okay. I know what we're talking about now. Thank you.
Sorry, we should have provided some kind of a visual. I apologize. I didn't really think about
Apologies,
that.
Sue.
Hey, John, I've actually got it up on a map. Can I share my screen real quick?
I would say if you can share your screen, share your screen. I don't have a control over that, but if. Okay, there we go.
Right here?
Started sharing. So we see a spreadsheet with no picture.
Nice view of the mountains, though.
There we go.
There you go. Yes. So it's,
Yeah, so I mean that whole area there, south of the existing FedEx is, the remaining portion of Postmark Bog. Obviously it used to have a huge footprint and it, over time has been built on. And so I can't exactly describe how the two leases, one to FedEx and one to Alaska Cargo Cold Storage, divide that kind of fat L shape, inverted L shape. But John, maybe you can. But anyway, between the two developments, they'll pretty well eat up the rest of the bog.
that's kind of where your cursor is kind of where that, I would say Utah shaped parcel is. So that's where it would occur.
Yeah, no. Now you're going too far south.
Okay,
So-
move it right in there. Yep, that's it.
That that area is where the two different leases are proposed, developments are proposed. So yes, Dan was correct. Those three plain looking things there on that pad, that developed pad, that's airport, you know, what was it called? Airport parking. Just
Totally,
transient.
yeah, a hard
transient
stand,
parking.
hard stand, I think.
Hard stand, yeah.
And again, we are, you know, so again, they're proposing to put a remediation, actually a PFAS capture system along the east side of the property and kind of along Postmark Drive there. And we're also suggesting they consider putting an earthen berm along there too, because again, those prop planes are going to be, rather than behind their building, now right adjacent to Postmark. And so you're probably going to hear a bit more airplane noise in the neighborhoods to the east.
Another thing too that needs to happen is for us to educate ourselves a little bit, because with this PFAS thing, we're talking about parts per million. And I think we need to do a little more work with that. I'm certainly willing to educate myself.
Yeah, I mean, just based on ACAT's study results showing that you know, like Spenard and Lake Hood are the by far the two highest contaminated areas where there was testing both in Anchorage and Fairbanks, is really telling. And you know, and the airport has done testing, as we've been told. And so and as they presented last, or excuse me, the DOT is doing testing as they've explained to us last month. And so this is a big issue, and this has to be dealt with appropriately in all these proposals. But just to, oh, and I see, Sarah, you've got your hand raised, just to reiterate so we can kind of wrap this up, is everything in the letter contain comments we've already approved. There's nothing new in it. We're just really emphasizing that mitigation is critical. Cumulative impacts are really important to take into consideration during their environmental assessment phase, and they want our input, you know, now at this stage. So, Sarah, I'm glad. Welcome home. And
Hi. Thank
good to see
you.
And, yes.
Just a traveling gal nowadays. Well, I just wanted to, one thing that wasn't mentioned, but was mentioned last month when the folks talked about PFAS, that really stood out to me was that it's not something that you get by playing in the water, or like when your dog is swimming in the lake or something like that. Like, it has to be ingested. And we're really lucky over here by Jones Lake. We're all on city water. So that does make me feel a little bit better. Our friends over there by Kincaid Park and Raspberry with the wells, that's a little bit of a different story. But that was a big takeaway when they talked, is that it didn't seem harmless if it got on your skin. And that's really good. It was just if you drank it. So I just wanted to bring that up again for everybody. And I'm sorry being late to the party. I was trying to get through the letter. And like you said, Kathy, it's definitely nothing we haven't been talking about for the last 2 years at least, because this is not news that they're gonna, that FedEx is wanting to lease that. In fact, the first environmental study that they started or applied for was over a year ago, and it timed out, so they had to go through the process again. But this is me speaking on behalf of being a community member, but I'm big into development of our airport. And as much as I love a good wetland, the entire city of Anchorage is built on a wetland, but we happen to have our airport where it's at. So I don't agree with everything in this letter. And if we are voting on it, I probably won't vote that I approve it. But yes, I agree that they need to do this responsibly as they go through the process. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, so the one thing that you know, building on what Sarah said is, you're right. I mean, that that's an important thing to take into consideration. So, but there is wildlife that does ingest and will drink water out of Jones Lake and nest in wetlands and so forth. So, so
You
contamination.
know what I was thinking of? I was thinking about that, Kathy. I was like, you know what? There's always moose over there eating out of that wetland. So if we pave it, we're actually going to save the moose because they can't eat the grass out of that poor area. So anyway, I thought the same thing.
And I
Like,
suggest we move to the vote.
those poor
Well-
little guys. Okay, thanks.
Call the question.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so Dan, did I just hear you?
Call the
call
question.
Call the question.
Okay, so the question has been called. So the motion before us is for Turnagain Community Council to approve this letter that is put, this comment letter with regard to the FedEx expansion project environmental assessment scoping phase, if that's the appropriate way to word it, John.
Yep.
And so let's go ahead and take a vote. So all in favor, if you can raise your hand, either electronically here or waving at me like Steve Montooth is. And I believe Jackie has hung up, so we don't have anybody on the phone. So let's go ahead and take a hand count.
Did you have a second to that motion?
Yes, Dan seconded it.
When's it gonna be open for discussion?
It has been for about 10.
No,
10 minutes.
after you discuss it, after you make the motion, please.
We did.
We
We
have
did.
been.
We did. Yep.
We
We
called the
we had a
question.
discussion after the motion was made. Yep.
The motion was made before we started discussing the contents of the letter and the project proposal, Merle. So we are voting on the motion to approve this TCC letter. So I've got 1, 2, let me raise my hand here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 7 yes. Is that Carolyn? Are you counting 7?
Yes, I see 7.
Okay, thank you. All opposed, please, everybody that raised your hand for yes, would you please lower your hand so that we can, so Dan, do you want to lower your hand? And then all opposed, please raise your hand. So I've got 1, 2, 3. Is that correct?
That's what I see. I see 3.
Okay, all right, well, so
You just went on mute.
Kathy, you're muted.
thank you. Okay, that motion passes. And so we will submit this comment letter to the appropriate people before the March 20th deadline and continue to follow this process as it unfolds. So thank you very much. Okay.
Hey,
So
Kathy.
now- what-
Kathy, this is Brian. Hey, this is Brian. I just wanted to say, I don't agree with the letter, but I do want you guys to know how much I appreciate the work you do to put into this kind of stuff. And we won't always agree on issues, but John, you and Kathy, thank you for the work that you guys do.
That's nice of you to say, Brian. I appreciate it. Okay. Okay, well, moving on to committee reports. So very, very quickly, with regard to linear naming panel, if you recall, this has been a long drawn out process where we have formally endorsed and are proposing that a handful of amenities at Lineary Park be named after people that had passed over time and had some of the things were informally named, but never went through a formal process, like the Michelle Byron Memorial Garden and the Bob Durst playing field. And so the assembly did approve the naming panel, and that's been a little while back. And the naming panel people, including me, we have not formally met yet, but we plan to later on this month and work with Adam Trombley from the municipality to continue moving through the process and hopefully we'll get that wrapped up, here in the next few weeks. And so that's just the latest on that. With regard to West Northern Lights, truck traffic, let me see if I can find exactly what I was gonna say about that was, I know, I don't have the email in front of me, but Jackie Armstrong has taken it on herself to contact Brad Coy, who is the traffic engineer at the municipality, and dialogue with him about the increasing, heavy freight truck traffic going to and from the airport, mostly, from North Air Park. And so they are starting, kind of triggering a more formal process to look at that and potentially see what's going on. TCC needs to follow up with that. But Jackie let me know the other day that Brad has actually responded to all of her complaints and concerns. Some of you know where Jackie lives, and it's right on Northern Lights, so she is impacted 24/7. I mean, it's the trucks go by, at all hours, and she sees them, at 4 or 5 in the morning, kind of rumble her house and wake her up. So she's done a yeoman's job of following up on that, and so we'll continue to provide information as far as now the traffic engineer and what may be undertaken to assess what's going on and what they might be able to do about it. So then we have our land use committee, multiple things under land use committee report, and I'll let John, co-chair of this committee, take the lead on kind of presenting items under this category.
Okay, and I'm going to talk fast and see if we can get done on time. So the first one, there's been a couple of municipal Title 21 amendments. There was amendments to the parking and accessory dwelling units in the past. We commented on those. The most recent one was the site access requirements. And it really seemed like it was aimed at facilitating infill development and more affordable housing. It dealt with more appropriate driveway width and multifamily circulation dimensions and requirements. Also with on-street pedestrian facilities and multifamily building and orientation. We didn't really have much to say on that. I actually sat in on the public hearing before Planning and Zoning Commission, and there was no one in the audience and no one submitted comments. So it got approved and it is going to be sent on to the assembly. The one thing I noticed is that this amendment establishes something called an urban neighborhood development context area to which these changes apply. And this is an area that's designated in parts of Turnagain that are west of Minnesota, south of Northern Lights, and east of Wisconsin. And so I don't know what the future implications are this is going to be, but they've kind of established this new area in Turnagain that has this title. So I think we need to keep an eye on it. The next thing up is that there's a Title 21 omnibus ordinance to amend Title 21. It appears to be mostly housekeeping to clean up discrepancies and sort of incorporating some of the things of the recent changes to Title 21. I'm going to look at it. If comments seem warranted, then we'll draft something up that can go before the board and TC for consideration. The P&Z meeting is on the 10th with comments due, I think, on March 20th. So if we do something, it'll probably likely be testimony and not comments, because I don't think we can draft those in time to get approval. The next thing is sort of the Fish Creek Trail connection update.
Sorry, John, I'm
Go
going
ahead.
to jump in there. So that omnibus comments are due March 20th, public hearing is April 10th. So,
Yep.
So yeah, we probably would, if we have any comments that written and submitted, then, we'd have to ratify them at our April.
Yeah, and I think what we may be able to do, if we have something we can agree to, we may talk about it in our meeting in April, and then it would be done as public testimony on the spot, not comments by the 20th. That probably can't be done.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So Fish Creek Trail connection, Kathy mentioned that we got this request from DOT for a National Historic Preservation Act consultation, which is extraordinarily unusual for a community council. I did reach out to Kathleen and Jean Belowski as longtime residents to see if they had any information on historic structures or activities in Fish Creek. And if anybody else does, please let us know. I also forwarded this letter to the Great Land Trust, who are unaware of this request, and they're going to look at it. There's a couple interesting things about this this letter. It provided a graphic that showed only two routes under consideration, and it's almost seemed to imply that they had eliminated all the routes from consideration, except for the one on the east side of the estuary and La Honda Drive. So based on that, I called Matt Edge at CRW to get an update on where the project is, and he got back to me this afternoon. He was surprised we've been contacted for consultation. He said the graphic was a very old figure and was quick to say that no alternatives have been formally eliminated as this time. He also said no preferred alternative has been selected either. He said that the team is working on detailed design phase later this spring and conducting survey and geotechnical information. When I asked him where they were, he kind of gave me a convoluted statement that said the NEPA process will be ongoing through design, will include permits for construction. However, permits can't be applied for until we have a more detailed design to present to the permitting agencies. Will not likely be done next winter, and that the design will incorporate the results of the NEPA process. You know, all this sounds like very circular logic. I find it a bit confusing. I did ask if DOT would be doing these surveys and geotechnical studies on all routes, and he said no. You know, this implies to me they have a preferred route, but they're not going to make it public till the end of the process. I also asked about when they respond to public comments, and he said they've already responded individually. I know the ones we received didn't have much specific information. He did say that they do want to come back before TCC sometime in the future when they have more information, and there will be an additional public open house sometime in the future. So I think we just have to keep asking and keep an eye on it and see where it goes. Any questions on that before I wrap up with airport updates?
Well, John, can I jump in real quick? And you said that they said they individually respond to individual comments. We submitted our resolution opposing this, but if they go ahead and move forward with it, we had a lot of asks.
Yes.
I don't believe we ever got a response unless, you know, it's
It
buried in
it might have been an
the
email and
box that I haven't seen.
yeah, it might have been an email, might have been very generic, but what I remember was not particularly helpful. So,
Okay.
you know, they're not being, you know, particularly responsive on this, and I think we're just going to have to keep asking questions.
Okay.
Okay, so the last one is airport, and we've talked about a number of airport things. I want to talk a bit more about the air traffic control tower and the new tower and Charlie General Aviation Parking relocation, the EA. So as people know, the FAA is proposing to relocate the air traffic control tower to an area northeast of the North Terminal where Charlie General Aviation Parking is. It's going to require location of the general aviation parking. It was originally planned to go east of Lake Hood Strip, close to the Turnagain neighborhoods, but after comments from the public, the current proposal is to relocate these 39 spaces north of Echo GA parking. And this will require partial relocation of Lake Hood Drive. You know, I might emphasize through all this, we've had very good cooperation and conversations with Ted Stevens International Airport, and they've been really helpful in working with us. So recently I had a conversation with Merle Akers, who identified some additional potential impacts of where this tower is going to be on Lake Hood General Aviation traffic patterns. And he thought that there might be some alternative locations that should be considered for the new tower that might require a smaller tower and have less impact on general aviation patterns. So a while back, we reached out to FAA to request a meeting to go over some of our concerns and suggestions. They thanked us for our comments, but said they were preparing an environmental assessment that would be available for our review this fall. I'm surprised that they held a scoping meeting for FedEx, but they're not holding a scoping meeting for the control tower relocation, which to me is a much bigger deal. So I suggest that the TCC prepare a letter to FAA similar to the one that we have done for FedEx, outlining what we think should be the study area, issues and concerns the EA should address, alternatives to consider, potential mitigation, and request a public scoping meeting. I will probably try to draft something this month for consideration by the board, and they can do with it as they wish and bring it past the members. So that's kind of an update there. The last thing to point out is we've had very good quarterly meetings with Craig Campbell and his staff. It's probably about time for another one coming up pretty soon. Kathy has some travel coming up. I have a work schedule coming up. And so we also will get this comprehensive presentation in theory on April 3rd that was referenced by Megan Peters. And so we may want to wait till perhaps late April to have the meeting with Craig Campbell. But I'm also thinking at some point soon, we also want to have a land use committee meeting so that we can focus on what are some of the airport topics we want to keep track of for both the master plan update and our discussions with Craig. So that's kind of a whirlwind wrap up of the land use committee. And I'll answer questions if there are any.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, John. Yep. Lots of things going on. Any questions? And then
John,
Corey.
thank you very much for the tremendous amount of work and attention, your involvement on all this.
Well, I think as we've talked about, we happen to be a pretty active community council with a lot of things intersecting with us. And I do want to make sure that through the land use committee, we provide opportunities to get together and have input from all of our members. Because again, I think as some of this conversation has over the FedEx letter, we want to try to work with an airport in a way that facilitates development and helps them meet their needs while, trying to avoid impacts that we can, again, avoid, minimize, or mitigate. And so the more people we can get involved with their different perspectives, the better. So I think a future land use committee meeting to talk about the airport would be great.
You have some date choices, preliminary?
Not yet, but I guess I have a question for Kathy. I don't know if we have a formal land use committee roster, but we want to open it up to anybody who's available. So I think when Kathy and I look at our schedules and find out when they can mesh, maybe we can suggest some dates that we can send out to the membership and have a meeting. My guess is with everything going on, we may not have a meeting until perhaps April, but perhaps at the next council meeting, we can get everybody to tell us who might be interested in attending that meeting and throw out some dates to consider. Kathy, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, we do have a roster. Anna Brawley did a good job of kind of putting together a list that because we got a lot more involvement when the Woodland Park housing proposal that JJ put forward, or that was put forward, and so we had a bigger attendance at our last handful of land use committee meetings, as well as the proposed Fish Creek Trail connection up to the coastal trail. And so those two things, as well as proposed development in Turnagain Bog, they're southeast of the gravel strip. So between those three issues, we had a lot more involvement and attendance in the last land use committee meetings that we've had. So we've got a pretty large list of members. Now they were concerned about specific projects. And so, we don't know how much that will overlap with any future attendance, but we do have a list. And so of course, anybody is welcome to participate in those committee meetings, but we're hoping that we get some longer term stable committee members rather than people that may jump in and out as depending on the issue. But of course, anybody is welcome to attend and participate.
And I say, if anybody on this call has a doubt that they're on that list, I would suggest emailing Kathy with your interest. We'll make sure it's there. And again, I think the next meeting we have should be kind of a comprehensive meeting on the airport, given the number of things in play and the master plan update coming up.
Did we pick a couple tentative dates now?
I mean, Kathy,
or sent out a note with some choices.
Yeah, I think you sent out a note. Kathy, you're out till the 14th, correct? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, from the 7th to the 14th.
And I'm out of commission all the week of the 26th and have some surgery the first week of April. So I kind of suspect it's going to be probably at least mid third week in April. And I may have to attend by remote, but that can be done. I see Merle has a hand up.
Sorry.
My question, Jonathan, are these meetings going to be in person? Having these Zoom meetings, is really hard to follow what's going on.
I would suggest that these are in-person meetings at the Federation of Community Council, where we can have like some maps and charts. You provided a very good graphic to me that I think is a great opportunity to use for talking about airport issues. So I would suggest they're in-person meetings at the FCC conference room.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's fine. We've done them there many times, and now it seems a little safer.
Yep.
Okay, Dan, you have your hand up, and then we're right
Time
at
to adjourn.
we're right at 9 p.m. So are you moving to adjourn?
No, I have one question about the Woodland Park subdivision. What is the status? Has anybody contacted JJ Brooks or has,
Dan, where were you about 10 minutes ago?
Kathy gave a report and she can brief you at home.
I talked to JJ this afternoon. He gave me a call. I'll fill you in after the
Okay.
meeting.
Sorry,
It's okay.
I don't know where I was at.
Can I move to adjourn?
Moved.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, anybody opposed? No, then our meeting is adjourned at 9:01. That's, for me,
Ooh,
that's
nice job.
really good.